I'm Gayatri from Chennai Photo Biennale. My colleague has put in our Instagram handle and our website. We're a nonprofit organization based in Chennai, and we have year-long programs related to photography. We also host a biannual photo festival in the city of Chennai. I want to tell you a little bit about the grant that we are going to be discussing today, as well as Ankha's project. We all know that the arts, including photography, educate and inspire people to protect the environment and promote sustainability. So we had thought of creating a grant that could raise awareness about conservation and environmental challenges that we all face collectively as a human race. So this grant, Iyarkai, which means nature in Tamil, supports young and emerging female photographers, researchers, and visual artists to pursue projects on conservation, ecology, and social issues related to climate change. So the grant was announced last year, and through a series of interviews, we had selected and awarded this grant to Ankha, and she is now at the reached the end of her project in terms of where the grant is, and maybe she'll talk a little bit about what her plans are for the project as we speak. But I'll hand over to Ankha and Mridu. Before that, I'd just like to give you a short bio of Ankha and Mridu, and so that you know a little bit about your speakers today. So Ankha is a poet, visual artist, and storyteller from Zero, Arunachal Pradesh. Her work is concerned with the intersections of gender, environment, and indigenous cosmology. She is a founder and a member of the AAMA Collective, a collective of women visual artists from Northeast of India. She is an alumni of Angkor Photo Workshop, Cambodia, recipient of Zuban Sasakawa Peace Foundation Grant and Amplify Photo Grant. I'm sure there's a lot more that Ankha does, but we kept it short. Mridu, who's also going to be speaking with Ankha today. Mridu Rai is the co-founder of the Confluence Collective. She's currently pursuing her PhD in visual anthropology from the University College London, where she is exploring animistic possibilities of photography. She is the recipient of the Critical Collective Photo South Asia Young Writers Award for lens-based practices and the IFA Art Research Grant. Her ongoing archival research project, How Do I Bring You Home, has been exhibited at the Royal Anthropological Institute, London, and Serendipity Arts Festival, Goa. Thank you, both of you, for agreeing to do this, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation we're going to have. So just to tell you about the program, it's 4:07. We're going to start with Ankha giving you some highlights of her project, walking you through her process. And once she's done with that, Mridu will take over and sort of lead this conversation with Ankha with a few aspects that they both wanted to talk about. At the end of that, maybe around 30 minutes or so, we will open up for interactive Q&A. But like I mentioned to you before, you can also leave in your messages and questions in the chat, and we'll try to moderate that as the conversation goes along. Mridu, that's what we discussed, right? That you would also look at the chats during the conversation. So over to you, Ankha.
Can you hear me? Thank you everyone for joining in. A few of you, I think, are new, but some of them I know already. And we've interacted personally, and I'm very happy to see some of you all here. First of all, thank you, CPB, and thank you, Gayatri, for that lovely introduction and taking all the awkwardness away. So I'm going to dive right into my work and my process. So initially, when I think it was around pandemic that the Chennai Photo Biennale had put up an open call for the Iyarkai conservation project, and I remember I was in Guwahati, and I was thinking in my head, okay, here is a conservation grant, and they're asking for people who, especially women photographers and young emerging artists, to kind of apply for it. So I was wondering if it was possible for me to apply, but I had to kind of think about the word conservation, because for me, a lot of things started to trigger when I heard the word conservation, because first time first thing I realized was the word conservation itself means different for us. Where I come from, I'm from Jiro, and Jiro is known mostly for the wet rice cultivation, where we cultivate both rice and fish together, and we are also known for our, closeness to the nature, especially when we celebrate festivals like Myokudri. It's all over internet, like what is known about our culture, what is known about our tribe and stuff. So for me, to approach it from that angle, I wanted to see if it was possible for me to kind of bring the idea of our worldview into the topic of, or into the theme of conservation. So the first thing I did was I went back when I got the chance to go back home. I went back home and I asked my father a lot of questions, and I was really throwing questions at him because being an elder and being somebody who's been in the field of conservation already. I wanted to understand his point of view, as in how did he perceive this. But something he said early on in the project like really guided me. He said something like, maybe at some point he got irritated with the question itself, that how do I perceive, and how are our communities protecting the forest, how are our community guiding or like conserving the forest. And I kept overusing the word conserve, and I think he got irritated, and he said something on those terms that how is it possible that it's we who are conserving forests? It is the other way around. It is the forests that are conserving us. And this was the initial point of thinking for me, and this was the initial hook that kind of pulled me towards it. And for me personally, I think I went on a journey after that to go in and learn and discover so much more that came later, from like the traditional knowledge systems to the cultural and the spiritual significances of the plants and animals that were very much part of our ecosystem, and to understand the oral mythologies and folklores that are part of our culture and our day-to-day practices, which are very, very relevant in our day-to-day life. Um, and it started to dawn on me that I started to begin like I began to talk to more of the elders, village elders, because spending more time with them felt more fruitful to me, and I felt like I was learning so many things that I may have never had the chance to even explore or even get into. And So I started speaking to the elders, and then later, there were during the process, I also went with the foragers and the herders who would go into the forest. And over time, I also created like a small set of herbarium. Um, Herbarium is the pressing of plants where you just collect the sample and then press them, but this was done mostly in assistance, or mostly in assistance to a forager. Me being an assistant to a forager, me being an assistant to a herder, and he was guiding me mostly as to like what leaf is used for which purpose in our community, and when is it used, or what's the best time does it grow, and all the other information he was giving me. It was also during this time that I started to like take photos as professionally, or like I would do with any other project. This time it was more like listening to them, more like learning from them than uh, so there are also a couple of poems that I ended writing up while in the process, um, because I realized that most of our cultures, when we talk about anything, it does not, we cannot not include the cosmology. And with cosmology, I mean, like when I say we worship sun and moon, it's not the literal sun and moon, but there's so many layers and there's so many realms to it that we start to see the interconnection of everything, and we start to see the interconnection of everything in the nature, everything in the nature that starts to speak. For example, even the stones have a voice, even the trees, the rivers, everything is river, and in a very spiritual way, it became more and more profound as I went deeper and deeper. So I feel like it's important for us to kind of really believe in this spiritual systems as well, which is in modern day maybe not so revered or like not so practical according to the sciences, because sciences I felt at some point I also had these questions coming at me like, but science does not say this, and science, since I also studied to be, I studied as a dentist and practiced for a few years, and became a dialogue. I mean, it became a dilemma in my head, more of like, what does the science say, but what does my traditional knowledge system say? And somewhere I felt like the science could not have the claims and answers to all the things that were perhaps moral and spiritual. And is that why I'm not taking this seriously? But I think this was far more important to me. And in a way, I had to find and develop a new language to kind of reiterate this and to illustrate what was happening back home. There were other things that I did during this term was to conduct workshops with elders and with the children, like college students. With the elders, it was mostly like getting them together, and I don't think I was at that point. I felt like I don't think I was in the right position to like teach them anything, but I was learning so much from them that we created a workshop in such a way that it was the elders remembering the forest or remembering the flora and the fauna for what it meant to them when they were children or when they were growing up, through their grandmother's stories, to their grandfather's stories, or to the stories that they were known to them. And for me, just by listening and observing at that point, by listening, I became I became to I became like more and more concerned with the idea of how we really pursue this topic of conservation, and whereas the world, in a world where like everything is going towards, in a way, greenwashing. Also, I'll be sharing the screen now to show a little bit of okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Uh, can you see this as well?
I can only see your presentation, Ankha.
Okay. All right. So this is Kormo Bekuduku. Kormo Bekuduku in Apatani means a seed is sprouting. This is a small statement that I put up. I would still consider this project an ongoing because I felt like there was so much more that I can do with this. Like I said, everything that for us starts with the creation theory. There was a verse that speaks about the idea of Big Bang theory in Apatani, and it was fascinating how the cultural activist Gyati Rana had kind of understood that what the priest meant was was more of the Big Bang theory that goes with the creation of the universe. In our practices, egg and chicken liver are a medium of reading the omens and reading, foretelling a situation, or be it in sickness, be it in accidents or anything, any healing ritual is initiated with the reading of egg or chicken liver. Everybody has a role in the society, whether it is a farmer, a herder, a priest, and somehow they all work towards this interconnection. They have been taught by their elders, and their elders have been taught by their elders. So this way, I feel the thread is being passed on from generations to generation. Mm, up until 90s and early 2000s, I think we didn't really have too much of divide in the tribe, but because of modernization and leading to conversion of other religions, there's becoming a divide in the religion, I mean, divide in the tribe, and also the knowledge system is being uh, divided itself. This is a collection of the herbarium, and you can see some of them, or most of them, are also spiritual. They're used for spiritual purposes, where even a layman cannot like pick it up or cannot pluck from the forest. And initially, when as a kid or as a person who was growing up, I would be a compulsive forager and I would pick up flowers and leaves and everything and just put it in my books and my table. But my mother would shout at me and she would say like, "This is not nice," and I would not understand until I did this project. The photo on your left is of Shumyoro. Shumyoro is our clan terrestrial deity. Like it's this is, for instance, this is from the Millo forest where I like it's my clan. And then we have year round, we do have festivals like, for instance, Myoko. We have this month Myoko, that is the spring festival, where we rejuvenate the relationship between people and spirits and ancestors. Trees are given names. When I say trees are given names, I'm not talking about a species name of how pine tree is named as Pinus something something, but you can see like 4 pine trees and each pine tree has a name. And somehow these also have like the stories of how they came, and they were once considered sisters. This is during the Myoko festival. Seemed to me like one of these days, like when I was going in a car with group of women, they all had empty baskets, so they had to go back home, and they were all cramped up in the car together, and Maruti 800, and we were like going through from one village to another, passing through the fields. But what has happened is over time, over the years, the leaves, I mean, the fields are starting to kind of disappear because of the construction of houses coming up. You don't see the mountains behind anymore. You don't see the forest behind anymore. To the horizon, in the horizon, like back when I was a kid, in the horizon there was endless number of fields, and suddenly like there are just houses popping up, markets popping up, Sunday market, Wednesday market, all kind of markets popping up. People have moved towards like ration, buying food from the ration more than cultivating it. And this was one of those in response to that. We do have a theory which says that all animals, all plants, and human beings, especially mithun, this is a mithun. It's considered a sacred animal for us, and we do have a theory that it's just called the sibling theory, quoted by Rana, again, the cultural activist. He talks about how human beings and Mithun, they're siblings, and Mithun is more like a sister to us. And uh, it, according to the story, like the humans were more hardworking, so we became humans. But Mithuns ended up daydreaming, and they were more like daydreamers, so that's why they became like Mithuns. That's one of the stories. But we can also kind of think about how Mithun is given during marriages as a bride price. So Nikun and Sukun. Nikun Sukun is a story on in the mythology that talks about being sisters. Oral tradition says that all living beings are the sons and daughters of Abotani, our forefather. It is believed that the tigers, eagles, snakes, even leeches, and other insects are descendants of Abotani, and we are all siblings. We are neither different nor superior to them. We are bestowed with charidore, which is the power to differentiate the good and the bad. So we are entrusted with responsibility to take care of the creation of the Almighty. Currently, the traditional forests are turning into what we can see right now as the most famous zero kiwi farms, uh, which are becoming so popular everywhere. The zero kiwi wine, and it's said that the kiwi forest or the kiwi farms take up more groundwater, and it takes like almost 400 to 500 years or more for a traditional forest to come back to its natural state. This is just the gist of the project. Uh, for more, I think there's in my website, and that's it.
Anka, do you want to leave your website link here as well in case people want to follow the project? You can put it in
I
the
will
chat.
be sharing it. Yes, I will be sharing
Great.
that.
Okay.
Okay. So right now, um, Mridu, I think we can
Yeah,
talk.
thank you
Yeah.
so much. Yeah, Anka, thank you so much for the presentation. I would also like just quickly like to thank Chennai Photo Biennale for creating this space for us to, converse about issues that we feel very closely about. And it's so nice to see a lot of people from Northeast India in the audience,
Yes.
which is really like a big deal for us. And again, thank you, Anka, with this work and also with a lot of your work. Like, thank you for opening up a world where, people like me can like find ourselves and like, or to, like seek to find ourselves. And which is which is quite new, right? I mean, this is just to find allies is it's it's been hard for us, but like I think your work kind of opens up that space. So thank you so much. Um, my first question is, you sort of spoke about it a little bit, which is the idea of conservation and how you're trying to explore that through the Apatani animistic practices. So conservation, of course, is a key term to your project and to the grant itself. But we are also like very, very aware that this is a Euro-Western category, and a lot of critical scholars have actually quite correctly pointed out that it is associated with colonial ideologies. And like you said, like your father mentioned, how an analogy is not found in most indigenous worldviews. So in this context, I would actually really be interested to know more about how you engaged with this concept, which is perhaps alien to your indigenous identity, in this very personal project, and how it shaped the politics and aesthetics of Kormo Bekuduku. But also, I would actually
Um,
also like if you also sort of spoke a little about the term indigeneity itself, which again is uh, Euro-Western construct. So I think it kind of goes with the idea of conservation itself.
yeah. So about the word indigeneity, I think this is something I have been consciously thinking and using the word because for I think ever since this did started doing my artistic practice, I think because before that I was a doctor and I barely had like any platform or anything that I had to kind of express that because that was not my cup of tea at that point. But I did kind of do like bit of a research on like the word indigenous itself, like what it meant. For me, I feel like there are things that are given to us in its most natural state, and for us to like kind of honor it and to recognize it and to kind of simply come into being itself is a big uh, privilege as well as a responsibility. Because let's say like for most of us, for me, I don't know, when the moment I wake up, I think about what dreams I've had, because dreams is very much part of our indigenous spiritual system as well. Um, and most often, these dreams they either guide me or they kind of forewarn me about certain things. And in our day-to-day practices as well, like it's not just about one thing or the another, but we start to see the patterns in everything. Whether be it, we become so connected to things, even if it is just the wind or even if it is just like the rain or the sun. We start to connect things, everything in our conscious or subconscious. I think for me that this connectedness to staying connected to that spirituality is indigenous. And am I making sense, Mridu? Like I feel like I should,
No, absolutely, yeah.
because I think even most often than not, like people have to kind of explain themselves, and especially for us as indigenous artists, we have to keep explaining ourselves why we use the word indigenous, and how people even kind of question us if it is valid for Northeasterns to call themselves indigenous. And I think it's valid because nobody tells us what to use and what not to use anymore. For a very long time, we have been debating about that. But coming to the project, what was the question? I forgot.
So it was about conservation, but just on how I think this is something that we spoke about and we have conversations, like ongoing conversations about. Just using the word indigenous seems problematic to not to us, but like we have been told by people that using the word or identifying ourselves as indigenous artists or indigenous scholars kind of marginalizes and puts you in a bracket, and we've been advised not to do that. But thank you for pointing out that that's what we've been told for years, like what to do and what not to do, like how you should live and how you should identify. But I think it's just
How we
time
should
that
merge with the other cultures and other,
yeah, so I think it's
that's
just it's just very powerful to just know that, like, someone like you is wearing their identity and their politics in their sleeves, and it also gives us a lot of strength. But coming back to my question, so it was about conservation and how it is a Euro-Western category, and how do you negotiate also a Western category that is associated with colonial ideologies. So I was wondering, how do you negotiate with that, with this entire concept, which, especially in the politics and aesthetics of this particular project, which also stems from a very personal space.
Yeah. For me, I think the first question that, I mean, the first point that really broke me, like I said, was my father asking me, what do you mean by conservation? You think we as human beings conserve the forest, but it's just the other way around. That really blew me off. Like it blew all that I knew or all that I've learned to the point. I mean, like the next step obviously was to question everything that I've learned, to question and understand or unlearn everything that I've learned, and also to start looking at things from a more personal approach rather than what is being taught to me or what is being fed to me as a when like through institutions or through studying. So because for me, luckily or fortunately, the close family that I live with, like my cousins, my father, and everything, they teach me so much that it was easier for me to learn from them, from a very, very personal space as well. It began from a personal space, and I consider to be very, very fortunate that way. And I think for me that was a way to go forward, that I can ask people whom I trust first, like start from the family circles, maybe start with the village elder or like my clan elder, and they would always guide me to one person or the other person who can help me with my questions, like given my curiosity and my hunger for knowledge. They would always tell me, oh, why don't you ask this person? Like, this person knows about that thing, but the other person knows about more about this thing. So I had to kind of really find my way to kind of go and navigate this mm, my family members and like make time to like really know what I was looking for.
Mm-hmm. Just I think drawing from that question and from what you said, I think like another important term and concept in your project is animism, and not just this project, like throughout your, I think from the first time I started conversing with you, which was 3-4 years ago, like animism formed like a very core part of your artistic practice. But then again, we know that animism was initially defined like primarily by anthropologists, and it also became a process of othering through the construction of indigenous cosmologies as primitive and magical, as opposed to the rational scientific worldviews of the West. And especially today, when debates around climate change and ecological destructions are gaining momentum. And I think this is also from where the grant also emerges. We see that animism is witnessing sort of a revival, especially in Western academic and artistic spaces, because of this spiritual connection that you spoke about, the spiritual connection that we have with the human and non-human world. But besides these debates, like you said, like when you talked about indigeneity, it's just something that's in our blood, right? Like it's just something that it's not something that we've been taught. Like it's just so innate in us. And like for me, like I said, besides these functional debates about animism, like I identify more with my animistic roots because it allows me to understand who I am in the world, like how I experience every day, like daily existence. So, and this is also why I'm very interested in exploring the connection between animism and artistic practices. But I was really keen to know, like, where, like, what does being an animist mean to you, and how does this feature in your work, or how does this shape your work, maybe specifically in the context of this particular project?
Yeah, I think being animist is like, I think it's the way of being, like I feel like there is no other, like no better way to explain this, because the more we try to explain, the more I think the more we ruin the uh, ruin the fabric of it, so it's just a way of being, like it's just a way of perceiving things more from our spiritual connection than anything else, to know that, to acknowledge that everything is connected, or everything speaks to each other, there's no difference between the animate world or the inanimate world, and somewhere it's all linked. And I feel what we're saying is, like right now, when you're saying that the modern world is, or the art world is opening up more towards the concept of animism, I feel even the young researchers have also slowly, from the northeast region, they're slowly realizing the truth in all of these things, from their own communities and from their own cultures that they come from, whether it is Limbu community or whether it is from Rai community or from Manoj or any tribe. We are slowly realizing the truth in all of these things, because we have come to a point where we're kind of exhausted of all the options in our, like, whether it is spiritual, I mean, whether it is science or religion and stuff like that. But when we go back to the most basic facts that are taught to us by our grandmothers and our elders in our village, you cannot dismiss it anymore, because we have seen the truth and we've been denying it for so long that we've started to kind of acknowledge it. And I'm glad that's happening. And yeah, so I just think it's more like a way of being, and it's given to us, like what you said, it's given to us.
It's
And
inherent.
yes, and it's something that we can recognize in each other as well sometimes. And I feel that strongly, because uh that's the thing I think brought me to you as well. Like that's how we got connected to each other. So
Yeah, I agree
that
with
is
you.
something.
And I actually really love and like really appreciate how you said that you you just mentioned that this is the truth, like this is the way of being, this is the truth. Because for too long, like our origin stories, like our cosmologies have been relegated to the realm of myth and fantasies. Whereas like for us, this is the truth, like this is the fact, right? And I think an indigenous scholar, Vanessa Watson, kind of like she talks about the origin story like indigenous stories, and she says this is not myth, this is history, this is fact. And I love how you said, like, your worldviews on animism, it is the truth. So I think it's important to assert that as well. And you spoke a little bit about science as well, and a lot of critique that comes when we talk about things like indigeneity. Animism is this contention between science and myth, or science and magic. And anything anything that can be, this philosopher Isabel Stengel, like, she talks about, like, anything that can be explained, anything that can be calculated and ordered becomes nature, and anything that cannot be explained becomes supernatural. And that is like the then there's like a clear separation between the more savage and the civilized knowledge systems. But I think there's like a space where science and science, like hard science, science with a capital S, is what I have an issue with, because like even our own worldviews, like even our own cosmologies have scientific groundings, right? Like in my cosmology, like in our right Tulung cosmology, we have the earth is like it is a spiritual space, and it has 3 stones, and it's built like there's like a geometry to it. So you can't dismiss like indigenous knowledge systems saying that it's non-scientific or it's just magical. So yeah, I really appreciate you bringing that up as well. Just, I think my next question is, it's a little bit of a difficult topic maybe, but I think it's important to address it and just open it up to more discussions and conversation. And because also you engage with it in your project. So it's about ritualized animal sacrifices. And so because we're talking about conservation animism, a lot of critique can be thrown at you that how do you negotiate with this idea of animal sacrifice? So because it is an ongoing practice within many animist cultures, or including like yours and mine, so I'm still trying to negotiate. I'm still trying to find a way to understand this, because in our culture, like, these sacrifices are given meaning by conducting prayers and rituals around the sacrifice, right? Like, we genuinely truly believe that it is an ethical practice, and like these animal sacrifices, it denotes like a relation between the humans and non-human world, and it is like a very, very deeply connected one, where the animal being sacrificed is not simply an object, like a disposable object, but we like completely endow the animal with subjecthood. So this whole dualism of modern Western epistemologies about nature, culture, human, non-human, subject, object kind of gets collapsed. Like, there is an absolute like concrete relationality even in these ritualized animal sacrifices. But so this is why like doing away with the sacrifice is not easy. Like, it is to erase and let go of like a very critical, crucial aspect of animist cosmologies, right? And so I'm not like saying this to defend the practice, but like the critique that comes towards it, the practice is quite valid. But like what I feel strongly against is when these critiques come from this very moral, religious perspective, and these practices are kind of categorized as savage, primitive, and savage practices. So like there's like, it's much more complex than what it seems. So I would love to hear, because you have this, the animal sacrifice does form a part of your project. So I would love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think sacrifice has been part of most of the cultures in the world. It's from the time immemorial like they've been part of the cultures. And for us, especially from in my society where we come from, like we believe in the connections of the spirits, like so sometimes we and also need to realize that our most of our cultures or most of our tribes don't have scripts on the written word, and so sometimes it's more like oral, and everything has been passed on from generations and generations orally. And sometimes we need different, where we've come to a point where language becomes more also metaphorical, where a thing is replaced for another, and even gestures play a part in this. The act of sacrifice is also a gesture for us. I mean, that itself becomes like a language that we speak or like we practice. So I feel in this we kind of have to see the interconnection more than anything. Besides, I think killing. That's why I won't say killing, but sacrifice. That's why it becomes a necessity, and we do sacrifice not in excess, and it's only done when it's called for. This is something we always tend to forget. We always tend to forget, or in our narratives, that why we are not killing it in excess, or we're not doing things in excess. We do things that has been given to us in our own proportions and in our own like calling. Like if somebody is sick in the family, and it can be like it can be detrimental disease, or it can be some kind of an accident, or something that was really harmful. For instance, even if it is like being having a fire, I mean, a house has caught fire. That means it's a big taboo for us, where we believe that the the wind spirits and even the fire spirits are angry at us, and there's some spirits that are like really angry at us. So we need to kind of make peace with that. Otherwise, what happens is in a Patani society, one house used to catch fire, all the houses in the village would catch fire because they were all made from the wood. So if one thing is rotten, everything gets rotten. And sometimes to kind of stop that, pause that, we have to kind of to control the shamans come over, and they kind of do the prayers that kind of stop all of these things, and more importantly as an offering to the spirits also to take care of us. This the even when I showed you the photo of the terrestrial deities that we have in our community, that is right in the village and not outside of the village. It's right in the village that we have the terrestrial deities, or the small forest that we consider to be sacred, where only the members can go. But that the purpose of the forest, or the purpose of the spirit, is to safeguard our well-being, and to safeguard our families and the generations as well. So I feel like this kind of respect is mutual, and it's something that if that respect is broken, if that boundary is crossed by humans, or either which way, because more often than not, we live in a time where we're starting to kind of deforest the land, and like do things which are excess. But the moment some boundaries are crossed, some lines are blurred, then there's always a way that we are told, or we are shown that, hey, listen, we need to resurrect some things here, we need to like fix some things here. And that's why I think this is essential more than anything else.
Thank you so much, Anka, for that. I think we're like running out of time, but I would just like to open up the Q&A. The audience, Gayatri, do they ask the question, or
Yeah, actually,
they
that's quite a good idea. No, maybe people can just unmute and ask their question, so it can be more lively a discussion. Maybe we can ask people to raise their hands and just kind of we can pull you up. Are there any questions? Does anybody would like to ask anything you want to share? I see something in the chat. Stuti, Okay, I can just read out Suti's comment. I think she's left something. Ankha, I love your photographs because they look magical despite the fact that you are capturing the everyday reality of people, communities living close to the forest. Do you think that the colonial brand of conservation misses out is an understanding and appreciation of this magic? The hills and its forests continue to enchant those who live amidst it, but it's not just about the utility of the forest, but its awe-inspiring presence as well. So I guess the question is, does this brand of conservation that we have kind of been using missing out on the magical aspect or the enchantment of the forest? Did I get that right, Suti? Please feel free to unmute and paraphrase.
Yes, you got that right, because I was wondering, we talk a lot about the idea of the exotic, and that's how the other sees, that's how people see, or the colonizer sees the other. But even as people who live in areas close to the forest, like I'm from Arunachal, and there are days when you actually can sense the magic and the enchantment. So I was just wondering if there are days when Ankha just wakes up and she senses that what she's experiencing is something that is, for the lack of a better word, sublime or enchanting. And like it's that sense which is kind of missing even amongst people who talk about maybe animal rights, or maybe when it comes to like environmentalism. If this sense of like a sense of, or like the beauty of the forest is not just a plain beauty, it's a beauty that inspires awe, just like Ankha's father pointed out, that it's the forest which is conserving us. So aesthetically, that's what I just wanted to know.
Yeah. Yes, Tuti, I feel that enchantment all the time. I think I'm naturally high on forests, like so it's my part in like it's part of my daily life in Jiro or anywhere that I have to spend a lot of time out in nature. And when as we talk about this, we know very much, like we all know very much in this modern day how natural world has opened up so much of space and room for our mental health as well, because we live in this time of pandemic, and it has really made us realize we're bringing more and more plants home, all of those things. And so something very interesting as well, when I did one of the workshops with the elder women, is they were amused that the children today are bringing plants home, because for them, for the elders, it's like the plants need to be where they are. You cannot like bring them in and out, but they're finding it very amusing that the children today, or the generation today, are really bringing in the plants inside their homes, which is not their natural place. So for me, at that point, when I heard that, I found that to be the most interesting fact, that and very honest. They were very honest for that Ata, whom I call her Ata, to speak about it like so openly. But I just thought about where we're all going in, and when we talk about conservation, the brand of conservation, I do have problems with it, because uh, who is it for again? Like this brand of like they come with this ideas about, okay, we need to protect, like we need to kind of grow, identify that, or grow this particular uh, green cover and all of those things. And for me, I feel like, whom is it benefiting? Like always, I keep questioning today, like whom does things benefit? Like even in the schemes of conservation and stuff like that, like is it for the corporations that kind of fund this, or is it for officials who kind of want us to compromise over certain areas of the forest, the limitations of the forest, like they're like the recent ones being like they're limiting us to forage fewer plants because of so and so reason. But I feel this foraging, again, the act of foraging itself is political in today's world. given so many circumstances as well. So conservation has to be kind of really the idea of conservation, whether it is coming from the forest department or whether it is coming from anybody else or the NGOs. I feel like this needs to be questioned, like for whom is it, like whom does it benefit more?
There was one more question from Lena. I know, sorry, Mridu, did you want to say something?
Oh, no, I was going to say the same. That I think Lena and Swarnim had raised their hands.
Yeah, hi. Lena here. So
Hi, Lena.
actually, hi. So actually, I was very interested in, like, when you talk about the animal sacrifice and the balancing of nature, that is what kind of like sums it up what you're trying to say, right? So how we are looking at the worldview of our Patanis as like a balance within the community and also with nature, coexisting with nature. If I'm correctly like kind of understanding what you try to say. So I was just looking at it from like my own point. I also come from a missing like my community's name is like missing tribe, so like we have a very close like cultural similarity also, because the
Yes.
Doni Polo is also
Yes.
like kind of like in missing community. So like I this is not a question in a sense, but sort of like I would like to like add to that what you were saying, like how in our culture also we are trying to look at like sacrifice is seen in a very different way, where we are looking at sacrifices which are done in a way to appease, because in our worldview, again, if we look at it from a certain worldview, this is something to do with also like supposing our soul has gone from our body, then how do we reconnect with our soul? Probably we need a medium, and this is sort of a sometimes very metaphorical way to connect with it. It's not always like the direct connection that I see when I'm looking at like the interpretation of animal sacrifices that we actually make. So beyond that, I just wanted to further say that like your point when you raised like when you said whose conservation we're talking about, that brings us to also a question of like how we are looking at development in a sense. Like it has gone a long way when we are looking at development as like those infrastructures and all, and now we're looking back at development from which vantage point, right? So on this note, I just wanted to am I making sense? I mean, like,
I think Lena, did you have a question, or
Okay.
I guess I think we got the point.
Yeah.
right.
Do you want to respond, Ankha?
Yep.
Wait, what was the question? Sorry, Lina, but the question was about sacrifice, is it? Or
No, actually, that was not the question. It was just like to supplement with what you were already
thank you.
Just like,
Okay.
how we also perceive our worldviews. That was what I just
No,
wanted to
no.
add. Yeah.
I think Swarnim
Okay.
had a question.
No, I'm very aware of the missing community and the Doni Polo, and in fact, I'm working closely with the missing community as well. And I think we are very similar. I think even in terms of language and our the Doni Polo faith also. So I see a lot of similarities. Okay, what's the next question?
Swarnim had raised her hand. Swarnim, would you like to unmute or even turn on your video and ask the question? Swarnim, are you there?
Who was the other person? Oh, Swarnim, there she is. You're on mute, Swarnim.
No, you need to unmute her. Sorry, you need to unmute.
I think she got her video and mute into her. Shall we go to the next person while Swarnim figures out the technical aspect?
Yeah.
Was there another name, Mridu, you said?
No, I just seen Lena and Swarnim.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think Swarnim, if you, no, I think she's dropped off. Is there any more questions from the group here? Or any comments? Because I think we're going to try to wrap it up soon. Sorry, my dogs just acted. Actually, I had one question. Similar to, I suppose, the earlier questions, one was about animal sacrifice. Sorry, Swarnam is trying to join. But if I can ask Ankha a question, is how do you, and I know it's a very complicated question, but how do you balance your view? Because you're obviously, you are someone who's closely associated with the community, but you also travel and you meet all kinds of people. How do you balance your view of old world practices and traditions and, these progressive notions and conversations we have about, gender equality or hierarchies or, just access to healthcare, modern healthcare rather. How do you see these two things kind of converging, and do you have an opinion on it?
Okay. I think I'm very open right now. My mind is just expanded in the recent years. Initially, that wasn't the case because I was more like defined by the text kind of a person. But I think now I feel it's through the experiences that I know more and like I learn more. It makes me more humble to realize that n- not everything uh, not everything that I know can be true, or not everything that is wrong is right, or it's like not everything that is right is also wrong. I'm sorry, is this question about connection between sacrifice and gender, or like?
No, I was talking more generally, not specifically about animal
Oh, okay,
sacrifice, but
okay.
the question was, if I can just rephrase, is we have old world practices that obviously we have been following for so many centuries, and they have significance and importance on so many levels, right? But there are also all these modern ideas that we're consuming now, like hierarchies or gender equality or access to modern healthcare. There are so many like political debates on all of this, right? So I was just wondering, at what point, like, where are the conflicts, maybe in the community that you work with, in these specific aspects? Because I was thinking, you mentioned something about healing and traditional healing. How does that conflict with healthcare or modern medicine? Similarly, are there gender based issues, and are there any conflicts in that space as well, rising from following of these very traditional old world practices?
Yeah. For us, I think the old world is still a continuity, and we still are in that world, very much part of, I don't know, very much part of what where we are presently. And I think things are not, uh, it is still, and it is not in like a binary thing for us. Coming then, when we talk about the gender equality, the gender discrepancies, I think there are things that, like for instance, photography has allowed me to enter some spaces because of um, the nature of the medium itself. Like some sacred spaces, maybe women are not allowed, and for me, I can enter because of the photography, because it's fairly new, and maybe it's not written, or they don't know what to make, or like people don't know if camera is allowed in these spaces, and especially by women and stuff. But they are elders also, it's becoming more and more, they are realizing it even more than before, that things need to be passed on, or the knowledge has to be passed on. And when I come these days uh, in the field with either a microphone or like a camera, they're very comfortable opening up to me, and they always say that it's because you're one of us, they're very open to like sharing these ideas. So, but
Awesome.
yeah,
Okay,
I
thank
think we're still in that. It's the same world for us. I don't know what is old world. I mean, it's very much part of my lived experiences in present as well. Now, if I go back home, I will be in the same rituals and the gathering. So
Okay. I think it's 5:10, so I think I don't want to keep people longer, but do you have any closing remarks, Ankha, Mridu? Do you want to say anything before we end? Swarnim, wait 1 second. Swarnim has raised her hand. I think we should allow.
Swarnim.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Sorry, first of all, for not being able to, use this Zoom, and then I was on my way back from my work, so there's a lot of. I'm so sorry for that. First of all, I'd like to thank Ankha and Mridu for this wonderful talk, and I could resonate with you so much, because I also come from an indigenous tribe. I'm a Limbu girl, and so even in my this is like, it's not a question. I just want to add to what you just said today. I mean, I also come from this community where we, as a human, we are not we are a part of a whole. We are a part of a larger web of life, and everything in our community, it has to coexist in harmony. And that is how where this balance and harmony and wellness and healing is something that, because we don't look at it as, that interconnectedness is where it's like we have a deep reverence for land, water, plants, animals, spirits, and everything. So, so that kind of balance and that kind of harmony is so important. Why? Is because it leads to healing. So this is one I wanted to say, from a tribal community, and also about that ritual sacrifice. I just wanted to, add to Mridu, because even I keep wondering about what would, animal activist would perceive about our, sacrificing of animal in our rituals, and then. And what happens is, like in most of the rituals, it is not like we just come together in a community and then we just decide of sacrificing an animal. It's not that. It doesn't happen that way. I'm talking about Limbu community. What happens is, like when someone dies in the family, what happens, the soul is taken. I mean, this is what the shamans in our community, we call them Yeba Yima. So they tell us that, and they have the power to communicate with the other world, the soul from the other world, from the spiritual world. So they communicate, and there's this negotiation of, they asking for the soul. I mean, the soul, the one who has died in the family, will be too scared to journey alone, to the ancestral place, because they will go to the ancestral. There's no concept of heaven and hell, but they will travel to the ancestral place. So when they go there, they are so petrified and scared, and they need someone, a friend, to travel along to that ancestral place. So of course shaman will help, but then these the soul keeps asking for a friend, and then they say that, and they negotiate that, I will take someone close from the family. I want to take that person. So that does not happen. How can a person, how can we allow the dead soul to take a person, life person? So that is how there's a negotiation of animal spirit, the soul for a soul, exchange for a soul for a soul. And that, like for example, the soul of a pig, for instance, in the community, the soul is the biggest sacrifice, so that that pig, the soul of a pig will accompany the soul of the dead person. And then and that is how they negotiate. So that is how we look at it. But then again, I keep, like Mridu's question, I keep pondering about how I mean how people would look at it, and how especially the animal activist and things like that. I mean, they would not understand this. I don't know whether they would understand this or not. So that is the question that keeps, kind of bothering me sometimes.
Thank you, Swarnim, for sharing your thoughts.
Yeah,
Thank you,
I think
Swarnim. You want to say something, Mridu?
No, I think, no, just like small point. I think we're just like trying to learn and unlearn. It's a process, right? Like we don't have any answers like yet, and we're just still finding out. And like I said, like, thank you so much, Chennai, for Tobiano, for creating this space to find solidarity and allies in this journey, you know, that Ankha and I are embarking on.
Oh, you're welcome. There are some more questions. There is one more question that's come in from Yashika. I'd like to know more about the I would like to know more on how, with the help of visual anthropology, could we bring out the indigenous understanding and worldviews to the modern day world? I mean, I think, Mridu, do you want, Ankha, do you want to answer that? It's a pretty broad question, but.
Yeah, I think anthropology is more of Mridu's cup of tea. So with a visual anthropology, do you think it is possible to bring out the indigenous understanding and the worldviews to the modern day world? I doubt, because most of the anthropologists are outsiders, and they barely. Well, I'm not sure how to answer this question, but uh, we should kind of yeah, again, it's the modern day world and the indigenous worldview, and there's always this separation, as if about the indigenous worldview and the modern day worldview. Like, we are very much in the modern day, and we're still it's a continuous world for us, you know. So I don't know, Mridu, do you want to answer this question?
I think, like, for me, like, anthropology has given me a lot of tools and just broaden my perspective to understand work and contextualize works like yours and a lot of other artistic practices in Northeast India. So I do see the potential of anthropology in, you know, understanding or bringing out understandings of indigenous worldviews, but anthropology done reflexively and reflectively, but it's a learning and unlearning process, but it has to be, I think, like anything else, like it has to be collaborative with the community that you're working with. But yeah, I mean, I do believe, and I do really see the potential of anthropology in reclaiming these indigenous knowledge systems, like what we're talking about today, because like I said, like it has really allowed me to understand more deeply like works like yours.
Okay, I think that on that note, I think this is a good place to stop. Ankha and Mridu, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Gayatri.
For this lovely conversation. I think I also learned a lot today. Even though I think, Ankha, I'm seeing your project for the second time, I think every time I'm learning something new. So I'm hoping to see where it goes in the future as well. If it's okay with you, for everybody else, I'm going to close the recording now, but I just want to make a quick few announcements. I think at CPB, those of you who've not already followed us, please do follow us on Instagram. We're celebrating women photographers and filmmakers this month at CPB. I think my colleague Shuchi is also still here. We're having a print sale all from now till I think maybe May, showcasing the works of women photographers from all over the country. So please do check out the print sale that's going on. They're quite affordable prints. Those of you who are in Chennai, we're having a film screening of filmmakers on the 25th and 26th of March. It's a weekend, Saturday, Sunday, alongside our fellowship program, which is the Kanava Fellowship. Our fellowship basically is 1 year long for women who learn photography and filmmaking during the course of a year. And at the end of the year, they showcase their work in March. So this is our second edition. So that's also going to be happening in Chennai. Please do follow us, promote the work we do so that more people hear about it and more people engage with what we do. And that's it. Shuchi, do you want to say something? I see you commenting. Okay, everything that's happening at CBB this month, she's made a post, so please do check it out. And thank you, everyone. Shuchi, you want to say something?
I mean, I just thought, thanks so much, Mridu and Ankha. This was a wonderful conversation. And, earlier Gayatri and I were wondering who's going to come on Zoom and who's going to, like we are so beyond Zoom now. But I'm so glad that we still decided to have this conversation today. And not only is it a meaningful conversation, but also a very important one. Hopefully encouraging more people to continue working in these spaces. Just hoping that we are able to continue these journeys, whether it's through the grant and working with artists. So as Gayatri shared, we have our print sale, we have screenings, we have a lot of other events happening. Also, our photo awards jury has just finished, so we will be announcing a shortlist very soon, and we will be having the winners as well as our jury in Chennai. I don't know how many of you are closer to Chennai, but there is a portfolio review also being offered with the jurors. In case you have friends around in Bangalore, Hyderabad, or anywhere else who would like to come to Chennai, then 29th of March is the day for the portfolio reviews as well. And thank you for joining. It's really been lovely. Thanks, Gayatri, for hosting the session. Great, thank you. Stay in touch. On Instagram is where we are most active, but we also have a newsletter. So in case if you want to remain updated. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I'm closing the call. So have a lovely evening, afternoon.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye, Ankha. Bye, Mridu. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.